Good evening and welcome to Fantasy Formula One Podcast. I am your host, Paul, and today we're going over the driver bio for Kevin Magnussen. He is driving the number 20 car for Haas. Kicking off the year, he was valued at $6.7 million, and his value went up 2.9, bringing him to a grand total of 9.6 at the end. And that was pretty standard for Haas. They were among the drivers who started at the, usually between they weren't the 4.5 and 5 like rookie driver numbers, because Kevin Magnussen does have a pretty good career in Formula One and a very interesting career in Formula One, I should say. So for him to start off at 6.7 was well worth it, was well justified, I think. And we'll go through and go race by race and see how he and Haas did. So kicking off the year, so Haas, just to let you know, so Haas has had a very interesting time in F1, right? And the big difference between Haas and a lot of other F1 teams is that most other F1 teams, all of them as far as I know, they build their own cars. They build their own parts. They build their own cars. That with the exception of with the exception of the gearbox or something, like some of the power units and stuff come from other teams. So for example, like Haas, they're not just Haas, they're Haas Ferrari, right? And Williams isn't Williams, it's Williams Mercedes. And Alpine isn't Alpine, it's Alpine Renault, right? Okay, cool. So, and Aston Martin isn't Aston Martin, it's Aston Martin, Armco, Mercedes. So there's Mercedes and Ferrari makes power units for the Ferrari, but they also make power units for Haas. Okay, so but with Haas, it's even more so because, again, as far as I know, you have to do a little more research on it to know for sure to what extent it is. But Haas doesn't make their own cars; they piecemeal their car together from suppliers. So where your Ferraris, your Mercedes, your Alpine, they all have a factory where they go and they make the parts for their car to their spec. Haas doesn't. They send out and they order their parts from different places and assemble the car like a kit. And that was their strategy, at least several years ago. That was their strategy. And it just hasn't really been panning out. And then they got a Russian oligarch to fund their team. And there's the oligarch's son, Nikita Mazepin. He was a driver up until the end of last year when Russia invaded Ukraine. And so then they severed their ties with the oligarch. Nikita lost his ride. And then Haas looks like it is this year. So lots of ups and downs. And we just found out that they got rid of their team principal. So more with Haas coming in. If you're looking for at least even back in 2020 when I first really started playing this, Haas is your gamble team. Haas, they have glimmers of hope and they'll do great things. But if you need a team that doesn't crash out necessarily so much, at least in 2020, you wouldn't go for Mazepin. We called him Nikita Megaspin because he kept the driver just wasn't. This is a driver who's no longer in it, but he just the car was too powerful for him. He just didn't have the skill. But these guys are good that they have now. But there's a lot of personality kind of dynamics and stuff like that going on. I say all that to say that where the previous some of the previous guys were talking about with like Ferrari and stuff like that, this is the opposite side of that coin. This is a team that is finished, I believe in 2023 they finished last in the Constructors' Championship, and they're trying to get things going to get back up. So the numbers are going to be a lot different. The conversation is going to be a lot different. So with Kevin Magnussen, qualified 17, finished 13. And I remember when he finished that well and got 8 fantasy points, I was like, wow, this guy, good. I'm glad Haas has him and looking forward to seeing good things. Round number 2, Saudi Arabia, qualified 13, finished 10, got 9 points. Very, very good. Round 3, qualified 14, finished 20. He got out at lap 52, got his DNF, got 2 points. Round 4 in Azerbaijan, qualified 18, finished 13, got 16 points. These are good points for Haas. Keep in mind that so far none of these equate to championship points until in Miami he qualified 4th, finished 10th, unless I miscounted. Nope. Qualified 4th, finished 10th, gets his first FIA point, and finished and got 6 fantasy points. Italy didn't occur. In round 7, Monaco qualified 7, got a DNF on lap 70 with a total of 1 point for that weekend. And then round 8, Spain qualified 17th, finished 18th. Which actually, qualified 17th, finished 18th, and I got 9 points. In round 9, Canada qualified 14th, finished 17th, got no points. Kevin Magnussen in round 10 in Austria qualified 19, finished 18, got 13 points, probably for passing. In Great Britain, round 11, qualified 19, and got a DNF, crashed out on lap 31 with a negative 19 points. In Hungary, qualified 19, finished 17 with 5 fantasy points. In 13 Belgium, round 13 Belgium, qualified 13, finished 15 with 9 fantasy points. In the Netherlands, qualified 18, finished 16 with 14 fantasy points. In Italy, round 15, qualified 19, finished 18 with 1 fantasy point. In Singapore, qualified 6, finished 10th, got another FIA point, and got 8 fantasy points. In round 17, Japan qualified, finished 15, and a lap down, got 4 fantasy points. In Qatar, qualified 19, finished 14, got 23 fantasy points for all his passings. In Texas, qualified 5th. Boom, everyone's minds were blown, right? They qualified 5th. The thing is, as you can tell from this, from how they've finished so far in the season, they can't keep that up. They had a great lap on a track he was good at, and he qualified 15th. But for us in fantasy land, right, you have a great qualifying, but then as soon as you finish worse than you qualified, you take those negative points. So he got a total of positive 12 points for the week, and he qualified 5th, finished a lap down, because they just don't have the pace. They're not that fast. In Mexico, qualified 8th, finished 20th. They got a DNF in lap 31. In round 21, Brazil. Now remember, remember in this one, technically by the book, if you were to look at where Kevin Magnussen finished in that round 20th at Mexico, he actually would have, the official rules have him finishing 15, 16, 17. They have him finish 17 because that was the order he went out in. Remember, here in Fantasyland, we don't care. If you get a DNF, you get negative 20 points and you move on. So whether you DNF on the first lap, first turn, crash out, or you have an engine fire or whatever, 80% through, it doesn't matter. It's all the same for the fantasy game, at least in 2023. It might be different for 2024. 2024 rules have not come out yet. Round 21 in Brazil, qualified 16, again, got a DNF on 0 laps. And I forget if that was he bumped into Charles Leclerc. See, and this is one of the things that we have to take into account. For Haas, it really probably, for the fantasy team Haas, it probably wouldn't matter too much. But in round 21, if you go back and watch it on YouTube, it's super interesting because Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc, and Kevin Magnussen all crash out on lap 1. And I forget how it all went. They were like muscling Frank, whatever, but the Ferrari, and the Williams sandwiched Kevin Magnussen, and they all get put out, and Kevin Magnussen didn't do anything. He was just racing his race. They went to pass him, or he went to pass them, or however it went, but I think it was whoever's on the inside didn't realize he was there, and they just sandwiched him up and tried to fit 3 cars into a 2-car space, and Kevin Magnussen got collateral damaged with all of that. Not his fault. How much do we then, as fantasy team managers, put that into account? And one of the things I'm wanting to do in 2024 season that I didn't really implement too much here is having that turn one, lap one DNF not weigh as much into my as a team manager's calculus, because the FIA themselves say the FIA themselves allow more wheel to wheel, more contact, more conflict during that first lap, and especially that first straightaway and that first turn, because it's more exciting. They don't want to penalize people for bustling for rank. So should we as fantasy team managers, like, how much should Kevin Magnussen, like, I remember this race, he didn't do anything wrong. He was just racing and got put out. Do we hold that against him or not? As soon as we don't hold it against him, well, now people are getting, crashing out, and we're not, taking that into our calculus. That's kind of irresponsible. But also for somebody like him, first lap, he didn't do anything wrong. So why are we going to penalize him and not? And yes, he down takes the points, but why are we going to penalize him and maybe not have him on our team anymore, even though it wasn't his fault? Something to consider, okay? Because not all DNFs are the same. As soon as half the field crashes out on lap one, well, shoot, dude, half the field crashed out on lap one. You're not going to sit here and be like, well, I don't know if I'm going to have Max Verstappen anymore because he crashed out, or Carlos Sainz. I don't know. Like, no, man, like, it's fine. Anyway, something to think about for 2024. Round 22 in Las Vegas, Kevin Magnussen qualified 9th, finished 13th. This trend, he can get that one lap speed, and it makes Haas happy because they're qualifying well. And the higher you qualify, if you qualify and then you always down take 5 spots, then yeah, you want to qualify higher so you can down take and still finish better. But he's finishing in the points a couple times, and most of the time he's high at the bottom top 10, regardless of how he qualifies, because that's how fast his car is, which is which might be a contributing factor as to why the team principal is no longer there, and I know he had personality conflicts too. Round 23, Abu Dhabi, qualified 4th. Rough way to finish the season. Got a DNF on lap 57. So technically, no, actually, he just finished 20th. Never mind. I apologize. I'm used to it. Qualified 14th, finished 20th, and finished the lap down, but he did finish, and he did not get any negative points for that. So let's go ahead and look at the end of the season numbers for Mr. Kevin Magnussen. He raced in all 22 rounds. He had 132 overtakes, 6 overtakes a race, which is good, especially for a Haas, But as soon as, and this is one of how some of the lower tier drivers, not lower tier, but some of the drivers who don't normally make it in the top 10 can continue to make fantasy points for us. Because if, let's say, I'm number 20 and I pass 5 cars, so now I'm 15th, I get 1 point for all those passings. As soon as I go in the pits and they all pass me, I don't get any negative points for that because I was in the pits. That doesn't count. I come out and I'm faster than them and I pass them all again. Well, great. Now I just got literally 10 points or 4 points, however you look at it. I got 10 points. Sorry, 8 points. I got 10 points for passing these guys twice. And even though they all passed me, but I was in the pits when they passed me, so it's just fine. Anyway, top 10 finishes 3, so I guess I had miscounted 1. So he's in the top 10 13% of the time. He had 3 DNFs, so that's negative 60 points he took. We'll be sure to talk about that here in a minute. Okay, cool. So he finished the season with 89 fantasy points and a 0.42 points per million. How does he get 4.2 when somebody like when somebody like Esteban Ocon gets 0.4? How is Kevin Magnussen, who gets less points than Esteban Ocon, actually have a better points per million? Well, it's because he costs less. And when you have Haas, at least in 2023, when you have Haas on your team, you're not getting them because you think you're going to do well. At least this was one of the strategies I had for one of my teams, you're putting all your money into the drivers you know are going to do well, but you have to have those 5 spots filled. So you get somebody like Kevin Magnussen, who he might not get you a lot of points, but for the most part, he's going to finish and he'll keep you in the positive over the course of the season. So for a 0.42 points per million, and he only costs you $6 million, well, guess what? You can go ahead and fill the entire bottom 2 slots. If you get him and you get one of the other drivers that's like $4 or $5 million, you can fill the whole bottom of your slot for $10 million. and not be penalized for it. So, but he finished with 89 points, and that would have been, 150 points if he hadn't crashed out so much. So when it comes to Haas, Kevin Magnussen is good. When it comes to Haas has just never been one of those they got last in the points championship, and that's where they're at. And hopefully they do better next year. They had this year was better than the 2022 year. But yeah, they're not going to be one of your main staple teams. But they, based on this performance, they could be one of those teams that kind of fill it in, so you can put the more money at the higher rung. Well, I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something. I will see you next time. Cheers.